Tori, are we good to start?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, cool. So hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Cunningham. I'm the head of the Film and Television Affinity Group for RISD, along with Eileen Chaikin. And we wanted to put on this panel about filming during COVID because we feel like, we're in these crazy unprecedented times and no one kind of knows exactly how to do it. And I put together this panel of a bunch of people that are all alumni who have been working during COVID and have helped make productions happen. And I specifically wanted to do it at this time because I wanted the live action seniors to be able to see this before they start shooting their degree projects during winter session. So let's talk about how to do this. So first off, I'm just going to introduce myself. Again, my name is Ryan Cunningham. I hate doing this myself, but I'm an Emmy and Peabody Award-winning producer of Broad City, Search Party, Last OG, Shivering Truth, Inside Amy Schumer, Louie, Amy Schumer Growing, The Electric Company, and I'm EP and director of the doc series Expecting Amy with HBO Max, and Lana Glazer, The Planet is Burning on Amazon. I also co-own Running Man, which is a New York City-based post house, and I'm the owner of Running Woman, which is a development company. And so my other panelists here are Karolina Johansson, who graduated from RISD in '06 in illustration. She's the founder of Common Marker, which is a production management platform. She's an award-winning visual designer with a background in brand and product development. After leaving RISD, she worked as a designer in entertainment and tech, including the companies Turner Broadcasting, DocuSign, and Microsoft. Her curiosity of great design and human behavior intersecting with technology steered her career to launch Common Marker. And after seeing firsthand the amount of waste and inefficiency on set, which I can tell you is very true, she designed an app to help crews save money and time. So Julian Marshall graduated from FAV in 2012. He found his love for filmmaking growing up skateboarding in Washington, DC. His work stems from an affinity for art, design, athletics, emerging technology, and political activism. While studying film at RISD, Julian honed his craft working for Shepard Fairey at Obey Giant, Schlo, and Wes Anderson on Moonrise Kingdom. His time at RISD culminated in directing an award-winning narrative film entitled Obey the Giant, which can be found on his website, julianmarshall.tv. About the early life of Shepard Fairey and the origin of his Obey Giant street art campaign. And since he's built a career developing feature films and directing commercials. And Leah Shore, our final panelists. Leah's been fortunate enough to have their films shown at film festivals, museums, and galleries worldwide. They were named one of Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces in Independent Film. And have been written about in publications such as Vice, The Atlantic, Wall Street Journal, Nowness, IndieWire, Filmmaker Magazine, and Talkhouse Film, etc. Their film Old Man is currently on Criterion Collection. So as far as that's our intros, and as far as our why I asked everybody to be part of this panel is I was seeking out alumni who have successfully done productions during COVID. So I wanted to know if we could all just go around and talk about what our experiences have been during COVID with production. Julian, do you want to start?
Sure. I live in New York City, where we got hammered in March and April and on, and when that started, production like immediately grinded to a halt. I think end of May, early June, I ended up going out during the protests and riots that happened after George Floyd died, and made a film. I made a short doc that ended up kind of going big online and sparked a bunch of production that started towards the end of the summer. So. August, I shot a campaign for Ford. It was 6 days in Michigan. September was 4 days on a campaign for Toyota. And I shot campaign for Chase month after that. And then the day after the election, I made a follow-up, or not the day after, the week after the election, I made a follow-up to the film that I made back in June.
Great. And you shot, one of the commercials was shot in Vancouver.
Yep.
Chase one was done in New York. The one in Vancouver was for
Toyota.
and the one in Michigan was for Ford. So you've been kind of in the mix of like a one-man band to like a full crazy union.
Yeah, the full gamut.
Yeah.
Basically, from, you know, shooting entirely on my own to, you know, 100-person crews, that kind of whole scale.
Great. So I think that's a pretty good broad base. Karolina, can you talk about what you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to Julian, you know, I'm based out of Los Angeles, and so the whole industry came to a halt here as well. And very few projects were greenlit basically through the summer. The only thing that was in production was basically non-union projects. So, you know, small independent features to music videos. We had actually set to launch back in March, February, like right before the shutdown. So instead of just like big unveiling for our platform, we ended up doing a soft launch. And we actually shifted our focus from so much about being the software solution, but actually trying to help filmmakers be successful in making their films. And so how do we support them through COVID? So we had a bit of a pivot as well of like, you know, going through the guidelines and figuring out and actually helping filmmakers navigate these sort of stormy waters. And, you know, when is the industry going to come back? And, you know, what are the implications of that going to be?
Great. And you're also doing a film festival, right?
I am. Yeah, we just announced last week that we're going to do a film challenge. It's a 24-hour film festival where anybody is open to sign up of all levels, but you get 24 hours to make a small film, and we're going to showcase it here in Los Angeles and broadcast it worldwide, which we're really excited about. And I think it kind of aligns with the projects that the seniors are working on, like how do we make a movie safely, and, you know, implementing these little safety measures as well for a film festival.
Great.
Yeah.
Leah, can you talk about, you've had, I know you were in production on your own film, but you've also had a number of animation projects as well, right?
Yeah, I live in New York. So, you know, we got hit hard. But luckily, I have been working remotely since I've graduated from RISD, so nothing has really changed for me. I also produce animated crazy things, from commercials for Adult Swim to random to short films for Oscilloscope that I'm producing right now.
And you just did an animation for the Lincoln Project.
Yeah, I just directed an episode for the Lincoln Project called Trump Bites, and everyone should watch that because it's pretty funny.
Put the link in the chat when you get a chance.
But yeah, I get paid to do that. And sometimes I get paid to make music too. But I'm an independent filmmaker as well, and I try to make at least a film a year. And I received this wonderful grant from Rooftop Films. And if you don't know what that is, you should look it up. It's a wonderful film festival in New York. And they gave me a women's grant, which is funny, I think. I don't know. And I had to make a film. And I was like, all right, I got to make a film during a pandemic. Okay. And I wrote a film with, you know, there were rules involved. So I wrote a film called Puss, which is about a lady who's super sexually frustrated. And, you know, I just, during quarantine.
Yeah.
And there are only 2 people in it, really. And I filmed in my apartment. I hired my friends who I've worked with. And honestly, half of them already had COVID, which made everyone feel even safer. You know, we did all.
which you did on purpose.
Yeah, I did it on purpose. I did. One of my lead actors had it. His whole family had it. They recovered. But, we did all the precautions that were needed for COVID safety. We wore all the PPE, except when my actors were acting, they took off their PPE, and we ate in separate rooms, took our temperatures, etc. And I think it came out very well. It might be my best film.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know we're excited to see it. So just sorry, I should give my background too. So about 3 weeks into quarantine, I was asked to join a group called the New York Producers COVID Response Alliance. And at first we just kind of did it because it was a bunch of producers that work in New York a lot. And we all were like really terrified that New York was gonna get blackballed as a filming location for any film and television projects. And so we really wanted to get together and say like, hey, we know how to do this. We can figure out how to do this and do it safely and put together these guidelines. And we ended up creating like a 30-page document that we submitted to the various networks and streamers and studios and unions, and the AMPTP ended up using it as the basis for their white paper of the guidelines of what to do. So during this, I've mostly been doing a ton of development and writing, developing projects, writing my own. I wrote a pilot, and then I also got hired to produce a project for HBO Max that just came out last Thursday called Colin Quinn and Friends, a parking lot comedy show that we filmed outdoors. It was a one-day shoot. We shot in a drive-in in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And it was the first major union shoot that happened in New York City that was like not a commercial. And then immediately after that, literally like 2 days later, I went into production on an independent pilot that I'm producing called Who's Annie? And that was, we had about an 8-person crew. We had multiple locations. But we were able to do it in a way that was smart and made sense. So I think we're going to talk through some of these tips for production during COVID right now. And I think the biggest thing that we want to start off with is talking about managing the scale of your project. And I know, Julian, you have a lot of thoughts about this. You're very passionate about this. And so I wanted to turn it over to you first.
Sure. Well, maybe the first and most important thing is that there's just nothing more important than safety. Don't do anything that you can't afford to do safely, period, whether it's COVID related or anything else. I think that this is a moment to really kind of embrace COVID. Don't fight it. Limitations really lead to creativity, and problem solving is so much a part of the process. So, I think managing the scope is everything. There's so many great films that have been made, by minimizing locations. Maybe one really great location, and all you need for a scene is 2 people in conflict. And so the other part of that is that the less you put on your plate, the more time you can really spend with your actors, and the more time you can spend making the important parts of your film great. So I think it's something to not be afraid of, but to really embrace it. And it may very well be that you make a film you wouldn't have been able to make otherwise because of what the world has given us now.
Yeah, so starting off with the writing, I mean, this was something that we did with the New York Producers COVID Response Alliance when we were writing up the guidelines, because we wanted to make it clear to the creatives, to the writers and directors and everybody, that you can't just write like a big crowd scene right now. Like that's just not remotely possible to pull off in a safe way. So it's about minimizing the amount of actors, tighten the focus on your characters. Like Julian said, minimize the locations. Like Leah was saying, her short film almost the entire thing is shot in one location. No massive set pieces. And I think it's very important to like be very, very specific about what you want to get, what is most important to capture, and just focus on those things. I know, Julian, you have a lot of thoughts on like, don't write a 20-page script.
Yeah. Less is more there. Don't write a 20-page script. My script for my DP was 25 pages, and I lost so much time in company moves, so much time and money doing company moves. And, really the most important thing is just that time spent with your actors. I found that for shorts, 7 pages, maybe 10, but really 7 is kind of the sweet spot. In the last 8 years, I've developed and written 4 features, and with each one I challenge myself to make them smaller, just limit the scope. It always helps you out later by putting less on your plate. And then the other part of that is screenwriting with editorial in mind. Cutting out anything from your script that's just going to end up on the edit room floor, because then you don't have to waste your time shooting it. And then just in terms of minimizing scope, get tested, get your crew tested, quarantine together in a house, and put yourself in a position where you don't really have to worry about COVID. That's that's really one way to go about it. The other way would be, what I did on the documentary We Are George Floyd that I made during the protests. It was just me and a camera. I made the film, myself. I went out with a P100 on, and just shot what the world gave me. It's a really empowering time to be a documentary filmmaker, because there's so much happening in the world, so many once in a lifetime things happening in the world right now. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. And and Leah, I think your script was only 7-8 pages, right?
Yeah, it was like 7 or 8 pages, but my DP was I think 10 or 11 minutes long in length. I think anything longer than that, I would probably dissuade you from doing. But
yeah, I had a 21-minute long documentary that went nowhere afterwards because it was too long.
Humble brag, mine premiered at Sundance, so there you go.
There you
10
go.
minutes,
Yeah.
10 minutes went there. So if you have a clear idea on what you want to do, I don't think time should be a restraint for you. But if you want to play at film festivals, I highly suggest 10 minutes or less. Great goal. Another rule for you.
Yeah. So, and I think, Julian mentioned this before, but the biggest thing to remember is that filmmaking is collaborative, as much as like people want to talk about the auteur theory or whatever, like you are responsible for this team of people that you are putting together. And, no shoot is worth anyone dying. So in terms of starting to set up your prep, one of the big things, and I know Julian and Leah, I think you have experience with this, is using Zoom for auditions. And also, if you need to have people be close together or intimate in scenes, try to cast people who already live together. Families, roommates, couples, things like that. There's tons and tons and tons of families that are like all actors.
It's also important because you don't want actors thinking about their safety while they're acting,
Yeah.
Get them invested in the scene. And so the more everyone can feel comfortable, the better your product will be.
Yeah. And I know you, Julian, I think you said, you had to have a couple scenes in some of the commercials that had like families in a car. And so you cast like real families.
Yeah, for Ford, we were casting families and people live together, couples, for that reason, because they had to be in enclosed vehicles and had to be comfortable. And, there's all sorts of compliance we had to deal with.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ryan, to your point about embracing collaboration, there's so many tools out there right now that allow collaboration remotely, like whether that's Slack or Asana or like a Basecamp. You could do Google Meets. Zoom is a great one. Like there's so much technology out there right now that very few people really need to be on set. Like you could do so much being off site, and like like a good friend of mine, you know, shot his video via Zoom. Like, you know, you can set up a shot remotely and direct a person remotely, even if you needed to.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. So, you know, there's been a huge gamut of approaches people have had to production over the last 9 months. You know, one has been doing, you know, entirely remote productions, remote directing, where you're either having people use their iPhone or, you know, computer camera, or you're sending them drop kits. There are plenty of companies that have developed kits that can just be sent off to people, you know, like a ring light around a camera, and you can control the settings on the camera remotely, you know, so that no one actually has to be in the same room. And, you know, if you have a concept that's really conducive to that approach, it's great. You know, the other side being, you know, we've done big crude shoots where our client and agency are remote, and there are all sorts of great collaboration tools for working with people who aren't there and don't have the context of, you know, what's happening on set. So, yeah.
You know, and I think something else we forgot to mention when we were talking about managing the scale is this is also like a really great time to find, to use different things for filmmaking, like Zoom, or, you know, to motivate a different way of filmmaking with the story. And I think, Leah, you were mentioning the movie The Host that came out.
Yeah, everyone should watch The Host. I think it's available on Shudder. They filmed it entirely on Zoom, and you kind of forget that we're in a pandemic, or they filmed it while there's a pandemic happening, because it's excellently executed.
And it's part of the storyline?
Yes, yeah, it is. I won't ruin it. Just watch it.
Okay.
But yeah, in my film, I have an interaction with my main character and two other like side characters, but I figured out a way where I was like, oh, I don't really need them together. I can film them while I'm on Zoom, directing them while they're at home. And I actually cast two people who are together to film from home, and it was a lot of fun directing them. That was like a performance on its own, and I should have filmed that, because it was there, you know, like, oh, should I light from here, you know, just it's fun. I suggest everyone should do it.
Yeah, like, so actor, can you please move
this
way? Yeah.
Yeah, and they came up with some interesting shots when I was like, no, I didn't mean it that way, and I had to actually draw it and then quickly send it to them on Zoom, you know, and it worked out.
Cool. So working remote, obviously there's so much that you can do remote. Honestly, your whole prep should be remote. And the biggest thing that we can say is, like, you've got to be organized. Shoot days are shorter. You have less time to get through stuff. You know, most places are recommending 10-hour shoot days, because it just puts less stress on your crew and your cast. And that's something that is really coming up a lot. I don't know if that came up with you at all, Julian or Leah, if you guys did 12-hour days or 10-hour days, but.
We've mostly done 10s just because that's union 10s. But yeah.
I'm gonna ask my producer. I forget. I mean, honestly, everyone was so excited about the film that we didn't care in the end. Yeah. So I'd probably say between 10 and 12 hours.
Okay. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing right now, the biggest thing that I'm seeing with productions is that you need to stay paperless. The more that you have papers floating around, call sheets, sides, everything like that, like, we all have phones, like, just make everything digital, so that you can access it. And that way you don't have a lot of extra things sitting around on your set that a lot of people might be touching. And you know, Karolina, if you could talk a little bit about Common Marker with this, and what Common Marker can do to help with the prep work.
Yeah.
Paperless.
Yeah, so we really kind of pick up the ball after all the budgeting and scheduling has been completed out of Movie Magic. And so then we tackle your call sheets and production reports and help distribute those to all your crew, which again eliminates the spread of the virus, because everything is digital. All all your crew members get a personalized email with our call sheet and location, everything in their email. They can confirm right in there that they got the information. So the more you can keep digital, whether like, even if that's on Google Drive or a Dropbox, allowing people access to their production or reference material, the better off you are, versus like giving them a piece of paper. So again, it kind of goes back to the tools of like collaboration and keeping everything in the cloud or allowing people access.
It's good for COVID. It's also good for the environment. You know, there's been a big
Yeah.
move in trying to get productions to be more green, and you know, and wasting tons and tons of paper is something that productions are.
And that was definitely our angle, like right before COVID, was like, we're definitely going to make you more sustainable and you are saving money as well. But now, like, it's definitely keeping everybody healthier and safer on set just to stay paperless as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the environment thanks you for it as well. Absolutely.
So a big part of your prep is going to be testing, is figuring out where you're doing the testing, the timing of your testing, etc. You know, we for the HBO Max shoot that I did, we had a deal with Mount Sinai Hospital, who came on. One of their doctors came on as our COVID compliance officer, which we'll talk about in a second, and he was able to arrange a clinic in one of Mount Sinai's clinics in Manhattan. As long as all of the crew members could get to that clinic, they could have all of our tests turn around in like about 36 hours. And that was important because we had to actually do everybody like 3 days before the shoot, because if somebody tested positive, we needed to be able to replace them and test that person and make sure that they got a negative test before the start of the shoot. So something else to consider is if you have some people who maybe you weren't necessarily planning on being in your crew, but who are sort of your backup crew, you might also consider asking them to get tested, because that then you just, you know, you're covered, you know. And you know, there's different ways to do it. I don't know if RISD actually has for the students that are in the DP classes, I don't know if RISD offers, I know they're doing testing, but I don't know if they offer it for just anybody. But you know, there's different like walk-in clinics that you can get things usually in about 3 days. Certain hospitals have walk-ins and they can get it to you in 24 hours. So you just need to do your research. You need to call around, you need to, you know, plan and
Yeah.
make a plan and have that in place. Another huge thing is sourcing PPE.
So
yeah.
taking one step back, also, you know, there are multiple types of COVID tests.
Yes.
You try to get PCR tests, which are much more accurate than the, you know, 15-minute antigen tests. You know, because I think that there's a pretty high false positive and false negative on the antigen test relative to the PCR test. So yeah,
the PCR test is the Q-tip up the nose swab.
yeah, nasal. Yeah. Well, I think they're both nasal swabs. Yeah.
Not so bad, that test.
I'm not crying. I'm not crying at all.
Your eyes will water, but it's not a big deal. Yeah.
So sourcing PPE is something that's really important. You know, everyone should get on it right now, because this winter, I mean, the way the numbers are looking right now, it's skyrocketing, and there's going to be much more demand for PPE. You know, during winter session when everyone's shooting. So obviously, you know, you have surgical masks, which you know, don't filter air but redirect air particles. You know, if two people are wearing them, they help you know, you keep the other person safe, then keep you safe. Then you have N95s, which filter out 95% of particles in both directions. They're really hard to get right now. It's like the American standard for respirators. But you know, this is really what you need for being in enclosed spaces or really tight enclosed spaces, and you really should have them if you're within 6 feet of someone. Then you have KN95s, which are the Chinese standard for respirators. They also filter out 95% of particles, but have different different fits and different breathability standards than the American standard for the N95. Then you have P100 respirators, which filter out 99% of particles. And this is what I used when I shot the protests and, you know, when I was in really close proximity to people. But it doesn't keep other people safe because it has a release valve on the front. So that's something important to know about it. Then you have eye protection. So you've got safety glasses, and I don't have a face shield here, but you know, if you're working with talent who, you know, when you're shooting, they don't have on a respirator or anything, you really should have eye protection or a face shield if you're getting within 6 feet of them.
Yeah.
But, you know, get on it now because I think you can still get KN95s on Amazon and from some other sources, but they're going to be gone fast.
Yeah, I just bought some last night.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be we're well over 100,000 cases a day now. And the last thing to be careful of is be careful of counterfeit respirators. You know, make sure you really know where you're getting them from and the standards.
It has to be like, I don't even know how to say it, NIOSH or NOIS certified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the other thing with PPE is also just like making a list of your whole crew and who is going to be actually on the set with your actors and having any sort of direct contact with them, and who doesn't have to be and who can stay off. And so that we'll talk about when we get to production, we'll talk about zones. But anyone who is going to be in contact with your actors should have at least face shields when they're not filming. So in between takes, also recommend masks, but everybody else around them should be in at least a KN95 mask. Because you want to also make sure that your actors feel comfortable and feel safe, and that they, you know, they're the ones who are having to expose their faces and, you know, to the world, so, or to your whole crew. So you want to make sure that everyone that's around them is wearing a KN95 and hopefully a face shield or some sort of glasses. The other thing to make sure is, like, I know some people are leaving and maybe doing production somewhere else. And it's really important that you check your local ordinances to see what the regulations are for the states that you're filming in, because, and be aware that it's always a moving target, because the rules kind of change constantly. So you want to just always be sort of checking up on that as you're leading up to your shoot. And, you know, and there's a lot of stuff that kind of the biggest problem for filming during COVID are all the things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, like meals, bathrooms, travel, company moves. You know, everything takes longer. You have to have breaks before and after your set to disinfect everything. Before and after your shoot day, I mean. You know, meals, recommend that you just find one place that will prepare meals ahead of time and order and have as minimal interaction as possible. You need to make sure that you have enough space at your location so that everyone can spread out to eat, because you do have to take your mask off, so obviously. You know, with like the special that I just did for HBO Max, we spent a crazy amount of money on these enormous tents that we set up on one side of the drive-in that was just for crew to have their meal before we did the shoot. And it was solely so that we could have these tables like 10 feet apart from each other, and everyone just sat at one, you know, each person got their own individual table. There's a lot of costs of things like that add up and that are kind of a huge pain in the ass. You know, the independent pilot that I did, one of the locations was a house, and we just set up a bunch of chairs with little individual folding tables in the backyard, like at least 6 feet away from each other for lunch breaks. And in another one, we were filming in a building in New York City that was mostly empty, and the owner of the location also owned 2 other floors in the building. And so we negotiated so that we could use the bathrooms and use one of the floors as our place for our crew to spread out and eat.
Ryan, I was gonna say too, it might be good to specify that the meals should try to be pre-packaged.
Yeah.
So there's no like buffet style, like nobody's gonna be touching your food. Like you get, a lunchbox with your food in it already kind of wrapped up. So it's not like, a tray of pizzas sitting out for people to breathe over. Like everything is pre-packaged for every crew member.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for adding
Of
that.
course.
The other thing is bathrooms. Bathrooms are a huge problem and a huge pain in the ass. And it's really important because your actors are taking their masks on and off so much and being exposed that it's really important that you have a separate bathroom for your actors from your crew. Just again, it's like their safety and security, and you want them to be comfortable because you want them to be able to give you a really great performance. The HBO Max thing that I just did, we had we had one bathroom that was just for the comedians that were going to be on camera because they weren't going to have masks on the whole time. And then we had another one for crew, and then we had another one for the audience. And it's very, very, very important that you keep those very separate, and that someone kind of makes a sweep every couple hours and does like a disinfection. And then travel. You have to think about how your crew is getting to your set. What are they, who are they possibly exposing themselves to during that time? It used to be that productions would often have like 15-passenger vans that they would use to move crew from one location to another for a company move. And now I think you can only have 3 people in a 15-passenger van per the guidelines. So, you have to think I think Julian, you mentioned you had, someone asked, what should we keep separate between crew and cast? Bathrooms.
Yeah.
Bathrooms. So, Julian, you mentioned that you had a couple of projects where you had a company move and the crew just had to like up and carry everything, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was when we were in Detroit, because you can't pile everyone into 15 passes and all of that,
Yeah. So the other important thing is to have a COVID compliance officer. And this can be, a lot of times it's somebody who typically would work in locations. So they would secure locations and they're familiar with a lot of different things along those lines. Also people who sometimes I've heard of some like first and second ADs taking on this role. But this is the person that should help you figure out where all the testing is, help you source the PPE, and is the person on set who is there to just keep an eye on everyone and make sure like, hey, you need to have your mask up over your nose, or, things like that. Or, you left and went out, you should have a new mask now. But the biggest thing with the COVID compliance officer is you want to find somebody that will work with you who isn't trying to like obstruct things, but is trying to work with you to help figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I would say somebody who's very detailed oriented, but also solutions based. So if there is something that will hold the production up, this person can collaborate with you and find a way around it that will make it safe for everybody.
Yeah. And then the other biggest thing we can say for prep is, break down to know exactly what you need. Like you have to be organized in general before a shoot, but you have to be extra organized during COVID, full storyboards, fully plan out schedules and break down and know that everything takes longer, and that if you are going to have a move, you need to add extra time for that. You need to anticipate that. So in terms of production, quarantining with a small crew is a great way to do it. If you all get tested and, quarantine together, and then, you're able to all shoot in, say, like one location, like one house. That's fantastic. I know, Leah, you had your crew, everybody in the crew sleep over, right? And how many people did you have in your crew?
Seven. Lovely and lucky people.
Yeah. And the independent pilot that I worked on, we had 8 crew members, and it was just, bare bones. Whereas the HBO Max project that I had like at least 100 people on the crew. So that's obviously like a much bigger thing to have to deal with. Okay, so you should know about the zones. So zone A should be only your actors and your immediate crew, your DP, your sound, your director, your like usually someone for props and like hair and makeup. Am I missing somebody? Who else am I missing?
Production designer, camera
Production
department.
designer, thank you. Yeah. But you want to try to keep anyone else, like even camera assistants and things like that, you want to keep them in zone B, so that you're minimizing the amount of people that interact with your actors as much as possible.
Really, the people who interact with them the most, other than the director, is hair and makeup.
Yes,
And
and hair and makeup should definitely have, N95 masks and face shields. Another thing with hair and makeup is you need to use either entirely new products that are brand new with new makeups, new sponges and everything. Or another thing you can do is recommend that your actors bring their own makeup. And I've been on sets where, the person doing hair and makeup is in like full PPE, like aprons and just everything. But I've also seen it where they're like kind of supervising the actors to put on their own makeup.
Yeah.
And guiding them along. Okay, so one of the things that I really recommend is having like really clear identification of zones, whether it's just like signs that you have everywhere. Another way I've seen it is that they've taken like LED lighting or Christmas lighting and put that around the areas of the zone so that like the blue lighting is zone A and the red lighting is zone B or whatever.
We basically use wristbands for most of it.
Wristbands are useful for your crew so you know who should be where. You can also just do it with like different colored tape. It's also really important that you tape out like wherever your camera person is or anyone like that, any sort of like crew member that needs a lot of equipment and needs to have a place. You need to tape out the area around them so that no one else can enter into that area, and that they can only be in that area. Again, like just try to limit your crew on set. If there's certain situations where it might be best if you direct your crew remotely. Where if you're in a really small location and it's just too much for the camera and sound to be in there with your actor, it's too much for you as well. Like set up, use FaceTime, use Zoom. We have all this really great technology now. And so that's something you can do. I think you did that for a few scenes in Leah, right? With Puss?
No, I wasn't there. But I would suggest if you don't have a really big budget, and I'm assuming a lot of people don't, to take on maybe multiple roles, which my crew and I did.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like limiting the crew on set, have everyone wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like I knew I was going to be very close to my actors. So, I mean, I've experience with makeup and hair. So I did that as well. And I made them bring their own makeup and I told them what I was going to do and asked their permission, etc. before.
Mhm. Also, what about wardrobe?
I also did that.
But did they wear their own
A lot of
clothes?
what we've done is have people bring their own clothes, and we just kind of have supplemented. Because obviously, in a lot of cases, you can't do fittings, and you can't, we were able to do fittings on Toyota in Vancouver, but couldn't do them in Detroit, for instance. But, yeah.
So, okay. Also maximizing time, like considering, now this is something that's like very luxurious, but consider if you have like say 2 locations within one location. So like, you're in one room of a house and another room of a house. While you're getting ready to film this one, have your other crew go and prep your other location while you're filming this one, so that when you're done, you're ready to just like pick up and move and get started right away. And it won't be such like a long, strenuous switch on your schedule. And the biggest thing is just like be prepared to pivot quickly, like be prepared to solve problems that come up. I mean, we all went to art school. We all went to RISD. Like that's what RISD teaches us, how to solve problems creatively. And so that's really the biggest thing. We have a couple questions from the attendees, but one last thing I wanted to mention is that we have, Karolina has, through Common Marker, she has like a 2-pager that kind of goes over all of the basics for COVID compliance that Tue is going to send out to everybody who signed up for the panel. And then also Karolina has really graciously and generously is going to allow anyone that is a senior with RISD right now who's about to shoot a live action DP to use her Common Marker production management software to help you plan your shoots, put together your call sheets, everything like that. And so we'll send out information after this as well of how to do that.
Yep.
So and anyone who has any questions, like please put it in the Q&A. Two questions that we got ahead of time is someone was asking, what are your suggestions for me as a female film director starting my independent production company during quarantine? Does anyone want to take that?
Is that a commercial production company or like narrative, like film and TV?
They did not say,
Okay.
but perhaps if that person is on, they can mention something.
Well, one thing, it's like maybe in general, you have to differentiate yourself right now. Because even before COVID, there are a lot of companies that were going under, especially in commercials, because the way the industry has kind of like crunched. So it's like if you're doing something the way someone else is doing it, it's not worth it. You have to be doing something completely different and differentiating yourself.
Yeah, I would say also it's an independent film production company. The other thing that I would say is study code compliance for filming, and develop projects that can be shot during this time. Don't write something with a huge scene at like a football game or something, because you're going to be out there trying to pitch it and you're not going to get funding. Being really on top of COVID compliance and being able to do it and having done it successfully is a huge selling point right now. Like I had a call with some producers the other day, and they were talking about, well, we just don't know how we do this during COVID. And I was like, well, I've done 2 successful shoots during COVID. And they were just like, oh my God, you should lead with that, because that's the big question right now. Everyone's like, how do we do this? I don't know. And so I would just say, like, as prepared as you can be for that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think the one thing with this whole pandemic is all the rules kind of went out the window. So definitely use that for your benefit. I've noticed that people that would not normally be approachable, like, are accepting emails or have their DMs open on Twitter, like, reach out to other filmmakers that you want to shadow or like work with. I've had a really
sitting around at home.
reaching in. Yeah, like, just reach out to people. Like, there've been, like,
Yeah.
it's a different world out there. People are more receptive, I feel, than we were like a year ago. So, like, contact the people you want to work with and see what it leads to.
Which is a great.
One important point you made earlier is that right now, whoever can produce right now and write smart stories that can be produced right now is going to win, because there's a huge demand for content. There's so much stuff that can't shoot right now. There's so many. There are also so many great collaborators who aren't working right now. For instance, on Ford, I got Robert Richardson to DP it because he had a gap between features. So, it's a great moment to get a lot of people who normally be working and aren't right now. And then, like, the Netflixes, Amazons, all the studios are hungry for content because there's a huge crunch.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Also, just in terms of a lot of people are not doing anything right now and have time to talk to you. It's a good time for me to mention the RISD network, which is something that I am on, and it's something that I'm like one of the co-chairs of, and it's important to us to get as many alumni and current students on there as possible, because it's a way for us all to reach out and have alumni to give back with just like a half-hour phone call, a mentorship, an apprenticeship, anything like that. So another question that we got are, what are your suggestions on how to submit films to festival during COVID-19, particularly featurettes? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Leah,
I mean, nothing has changed.
Yeah, so I was going to say, that process, the submissions process is already so streamlined digitally. The question is more so what's going to happen to all these festivals. How many of them have pivoted to do their festivals digitally? The tricky thing is that, what's fantastic about film festivals is the people that you meet there. So hopefully they're going to find some way of maintaining that spirit in kind of the digital world of this year.
I'm attending 2 right now, and I'm having a great time. I've met people via a digital film festival, and I highly suggest everyone apply to anything, even if it's online, because it's the best experience.
Same thing, I just did IFP week with a project that I had, and we did the whole thing virtually, and it went fantastically. And we were able to get more people and meetings with like bigger people. It was like the head of the studio versus an assistant who got sent to fly to New York to go to this thing. So you're able to get a lot more direct access to people right now. So another question. Okay, someone said anonymously, the seniors have to work around RISD's guidelines on top of COVID guidelines. I.e. RISD is currently telling us that actors have to wear masks on camera. Any suggestion on how to work around that?
I mean, I just watched this like really cool K-pop music video that was made like 7 years ago, and they were all wearing masks, and I thought it was made this year. So I don't know. I think you can do it. That's not a hard restriction. Come on.
Yeah.
It's an annoying one, but it asks you to get creative. It's like shoot Breaking Bad,
like that's a sci-fi movie waiting to happen, or a horror movie.
Yeah.
Or punk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not ideal, but it also, you know, it can give you benefits too. It means that, you know, by not seeing your actors' mouths move, you can ADR stuff later. There's a lot of
that is
flexibility.
true.
Or if you're an animator, you can animate the mouths using the masks with replacements. There you go.
Yeah,
That would be really cool. Maybe I should do
some green dots on it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, that's a hard thing. I would think that if your actors are 6 feet apart and you are able to shoot at least 6 feet away from them, that you should be able to get away with not wearing masks. But I mean, I don't know what RISD's rules are, so
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be, like, you know, with each project that we pitch on, we have a whole page in our deck devoted to COVID and COVID safety. Like, put together a really clear plan about how you're going to keep everyone safe, and maybe talk to whoever made those guidelines and see if there's flexibility. You know, maybe they'd appreciate that. But if that doesn't work, you know, be smart, right?
Yeah.
Write a story that's conducive to it.
I mean, every single production, they didn't have an agreement with any of the unions in Hollywood and in the industry until like October, I think, or September. And so anything that was done before that had to get a special pass, and everything had to, every single project had to write these like 50-page reports that the COVID compliance officer would put together that would say exactly all the precautions that they're doing. And, you know, and we were able to go back and like ask for certain things, you know, for example, like with the HBO Max show, they were so nervous about the audience and the audience in the cars. And we went from having 100 cars to 80 cars to 20 cars. And no one was allowed to get out of the cars, and we had to keep the cars like 20 feet apart. And they didn't want anyone to be outside of their cars at all. So no one could like sit in the back of a pickup truck or like with a with the hatchback up. So they had to wear masks. But I think that, you know, we were able to get that last minute, like we were able to turn to them and say like, hey, you know, it'd be really great if we could have some people like they usually are in drive-ins, like with the back of their car up. And, you know, and they said that they could do it, but only if they wore masks, if they were outside of the car. But if they were inside of the car, they could have the windows down, but if they were inside of the car, they did not have to have masks on. And that was kind of how we did it. And, you know, everything's constantly changing. I also just got a message from Carissa saying, I made the guidelines. It's about the quality of the air in the studios, which is also a huge thing, actually. Know your locations and know what the ventilation is. That's also a huge thing.
Yeah, hopefully you're in a space, like, if you can, you want to find locations that have HEPA filters, you know, high quality HEPA filters, so the air is being recycled constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, you know, your home, your average home isn't going to have like an industrial, you know, HEPA HVAC system, but that definitely helps.
You could get a few air purifiers. I mean, that would help at the very least.
Yeah. You know, and perhaps like if you're filming in the studios at RISD, I know like there might be some ventilation issues and air quality. And so if you're filming in the studios, in the black studio or the blue studio, then like, you know, your actors have to wear masks. But if you're shooting outdoors or, you know, things like that, someone says, along the same vein, if we were shooting outdoors, would that be a way to work around having the actors have to wear masks on screen? Yes, I would say yes. If you're shooting outside and you're able to have a certain distance and everyone's like fully PPE'd, everyone's been tested, your actors feel comfortable with it, that is a way to do it. It's harder to do in an indoor location versus an outdoor location, which I know is not the best news for the senior DPs who are about to shoot like in January, but
Maybe we'll get lucky. It was 60 degrees in February when I shot mine.
Yeah, never know. You never know. Okay, and there's a question from Lauren. Where do you pitch your work right now? If you've been writing short films, TV pilots, etc.
So where do you pitch?
Where do you pitch? Yeah.
Well, again, like right now is such a unique moment where there's a content crunch. There's so much desire for content.
Mhm.
And so people are really listening, and especially because everyone's at home right now, they've got a lot more time in their day as opposed to the normal day of those people zipping around meeting to meeting. So people are a lot more willing to listen. And yeah, so anyone who can actually write content that can be made right now is putting themselves in a really good position.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of the networks and studios right now are saying that they have sort of put a shutdown on anything for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
In terms of greenlighting things, just because most of them are like at the end of their budgets for the year, etc. But everything sort of refreshes in January.
It's actually one kind of important thing is that I think it's important, at least once you get out of RISD, to try to engage in all of the disciplines as much as you can, whether it be film, TV, and commercials, because right now is a moment where long form is pretty screwed, and as Ryan said, no one's greenlighting anything, but commercials are going full speed right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, the more you can kind of diversify yourself and your offering as a filmmaker, the more you can kind of get through these volatile hurdles.
Yeah, I would vouch for that as well. That's what I've been seeing. As for the film permits that get issued out here, they're all short content or like music videos or commercials right now. Like the long content is just, it's not.
It is happening, but it's rare, and it's more rare, and it's under a lot of restrictions, and there are a lot of shoots that are happening but then are being shut down like a couple days in because somebody tests positive, and then they all have to go quarantine, and it's a lot more complicated right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of what I'm seeing right now is you've got the highest end, like Netflix, Disney, the really big studios who are pouring insane amounts of money in to keep big productions going. They've got labs built on set to do testing every day. And then you've got really small, smart, independent features that are shooting right now. People are going and quarantining in a house and shooting a feature in 12 days. I've got a friend who just finished one, but the middle is kind of screwed right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the larger budgets have the money to like insulate themselves a little bit more. So you just got to be smart about it. And like you said,
yeah. And if you're doing something for, say, Netflix has in Los Angeles, like they have, I think, 3 or 4 huge studios that they've already totally inspected, cleared the air quality, everything's good. And they're just, anything that they're greenlighting, they're just like, you have to shoot in these studios. And they actually have like a whole clinic set up on Sunset Boulevard where every single crew member just has to like drive there before they go to the set to get tested and then go. And so, there's certain places that have that like got really on it and have put a bunch of like protocols and things in place. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah.
You guys are like, oh, I don't know anybody in the industry. How can I meet them? Again, I cannot emphasize enough on how important film festivals are and have been for my career. I have
film
met
festivals, panels.
I've met so many amazing people through film festivals and have pitched TV shows to executives because of that, and attend things, even if it's online, because you never know.
Yeah. Someone asked, where can we view this webinar after it's over so that we can better make our shooting plans? So Tue is going to follow up on this with an email to everyone who registered for the panel with a link to see the video and reference it. And then we're also going to send along, again, this like 2-sheet that Common Marker put out, along with a few other like notes from us. And then Karolina is also going to send out the information on how you can access and use Common Marker. Are there any, if there's no more questions, I don't think there's any final questions. I think then we're pretty much done. Thank you guys so much for doing this. And again, like, just remember to join the RISD Film and Television Affinity Group. If you're, I don't know if you can join as a student, but definitely, like, once you graduate, join as an alumni. And also, if anyone has any ideas or suggestions of the kind of programming that you'd like to see, or anything along those lines, please reach out to me. I can be reached through the RISD network. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can probably find me on Instagram. It's at Ryan E. Cunningham, or Facebook, or whatever. And or my website, runningmanpost.com. My email address is on there. And feel free to reach out and make suggestions, or if you have further questions, just let us know.
Yeah, feel free to email me if you have any questions. Yes, Ryan, you can send out our contact info.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm glad we were able to do this. We wanted to do something to kind of help the seniors this year, because I know it's a pretty rough time. But at least you're able to film. NYU's not letting any of their students film anything. So yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.